Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and on this wonderful sunny Wednesday afternoon, I'm joined today by Mr. Mdluli. Mlondi, how are you doing, man?
Good, and you, Nick? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, I must say, all things considered. And we also have Mr. Terence Corrigan. Terence, how are you doing this fine day, sir?
I'm okay, Nick. I'm okay.
Thank you once again for being on the show again today, Terence. It is much appreciated.
Our viewers get me twice in a row.
I know it's
like tomorrow they have a hat trick.
Exactly, it's like finding out that you have, you go to sleep on Christmas and you wake up the next day and it's Christmas again. Like, but anyway, okay.
You scamp you.
Indeed. What is the news of today? Well, I think probably the most important thing happening today, and it's going to happen just as the live streaming of the show finishes, but those of you listening on audio only will only be able to hear this once this is a little bit out of date. But our Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, is going to be giving his midterm budget policy speech today at, I think, 2:00. And there he's going to offer some adjustments and provide some indications of how the government is going to steer the ship of state for the next couple of months until the big budget in February. This is a pretty important day for kind of finance markets government, because it's where we see how government is responding to the various changing economic conditions around the world. So we've got a lot of problems still, state failure, service delivery problems, a global environment where there's a lot of tension, particularly between the West and Russia, but also increasingly between China and the West. The zero COVID policies in China, which have disrupted economic systems there. The lingering effects of the supply chain crisis, and of course, the large degree of inflation across the world, where we're seeing prices go up pretty much everywhere. I think in the UK, they're even above, the inflation is above 10%, which is pretty wild considering how low it's been in recent years. So it's not a great time to be finance minister. Being finance minister during the commodities boom of the mid-2000s would probably be much more fun. But nevertheless, Enoch Godongwana has to go out there and give his budget speech. So, Mlondi, you're an economics guy, as we've pointed out to viewers on the show. You recently actually got your master's in economics. What can we expect from this budget, do you think?
Yes, well, Nick, basically, what I expect is that government's deficit is going to narrow down just by a little bit from 6% in the figure that was projected in the February budget speech to 5.5%, and this is because of the increase in the corporate income tax, as well as the as well as the personal income tax, and also just the thing to look out for, Nick, is the government's debt, because we know that Eskom is a bit of a problem still. The debt is still high at Eskom, so definitely that's also something to.
How much is the Eskom debt at the moment? Because I know that Eskom's had some success recently in reducing it, but it's still in excess of what, 350 billion rand?
Yes, it's very high, Nick. It's very high, but yes, but a government has tried, to just to have it a decrease, but it's still high. It's still fairly high, so definitely it's still a problem for the economy.
Yeah, so government has had to play this funny game of kind of pretending like, well, Eskom's debt's not really government debt, it's this SOE's debt. But then we also, despite the many promises that the bailouts would stop, they kind of keep sort of happening here and there. I can't imagine this heavy period of load shedding has been particularly good for Eskom's finances either, because, when you can't make electricity, you can't sell electricity, and that's only going to make your debt problem worse. So, difficult situation they find themselves in. Terence, what do you think we're going to see from government? I mean, just as we looked like we were heading for some kind of financial fiscal oblivion during the pandemic, we had this little commodities windfall, and things kind of seem to stabilize a bit. And as Mlondi just pointed out, the deficit is going to decrease very slightly, but it's still really high. What do you think the minister can actually do here?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my fan Jane Norkier, who says, "Hi, yay, Terence again." Well, it's not many people say that to me, so let me shout out there. What do I see the government doing? Well, I'd rather close my eyes and just whistle Dixie or whatever it is that what does, because usually it's nothing good. Hope not being a strategy. We are kind of on a path that is staving off an inevitable showdown. My sense of it, from what I can glean from people in the know, is that the Treasury is not wild about the idea of a permanent universal income grant, which is something that I'm not opposed to on principle. I just don't think we have the resources for it. But I think that, unfortunately, the gaping maw of Eskom and Transnet particularly is going to remain wide open, because those do sit at such critical junctures in the economy. Okay, they don't work very well or whatever, but they sort of what we've got at the moment. And no, look, I think there was something, as the dreadful phrase disingenuous has it, that to say, well, this isn't really government debt, this is Eskom debt. It's like, you take out 5 different credit cards and you say it's not too bad because this card's not maxed out yet. But there's others.
Yeah, it's all just shuffling the deck chairs.
I heard that there was a chap in worked in the economics department who used to lecture young people on finances and fiscal consolidation, all this, and apparently his whole strategy to managing his own finances was borrow from the one card to pay off the other.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult situation the government finds it in, but this is, of course, the sort of in many ways, I think one of the biggest immediate threats to the state, and one of the biggest problems that a new government is going to have coming in, because even if you can put in all the reforms that you like and start to get the economy growing again and all these things, to recover our finances is going to still take quite a bit of time. And any new coalition government that takes over in either 24 or 29 is going to have to navigate a very narrow space where you have a lot of people depending on the state for resources, and at the same time a state that has blown out the budget. It's like trying to fix if you move in and your housemate or the person who was staying there before has maxed out all the credit cards and trashed the whole room. Exactly. You need to you're going to have to do a lot of work to fix those finances. A job I'm glad I will never ever have to do, because thankfully my financial skills are terrible, and therefore I will never be put in charge for anything like that. Mlondi, any final thoughts? Just a brief thing before we move on.
Yes, well, I've just seen a nice comment here from Jay Anorti, and thank you very much, man. I really appreciate your comments. It's definitely boosted my self-esteem, so thank you very much. Thank you.
No, sure thing. Okay, let us move on to our next topic, and this is back to the realm of city politics. So we've talked an awful lot about Johannesburg recently, and it's the fierce battles for over control of that city. We now once again have a DA mayor in Johannesburg after a court decision, although that probably won't last too long unless the DA can throw together a coalition in the next 2 weeks. But just as the DA gets Joburg, it looks like it's set to lose Ekurhuleni. So I believe today that there's going to be a motion of no confidence vote in the mayor of Ekurhuleni, Tanya Campbell. And without the support of the EFF, who are probably going to abstain from the vote, the DA is doomed to go back to the opposition benches along with its coalition partners. But, I I guess my take on this one is this is kind of a surprise for the DA and the coalition in general, is that they never really expected to have Ekurhuleni at all, right? I mean, so much so that during the 2021 elections, the DA put forward Rafiwa Nseke, who's I think a deputy federal chairperson of the DA, as their candidate for mayor of Ekurhuleni. And she campaigned, but when they saw that they weren't going to have the votes, particularly that they would have to rely on the EFF, she said, no, I'm not going to actually leave the Gauteng legislature where I currently work to take up my seat in council because, I ran for mayor and I'm just, we don't have a shot at being elected mayor. Well, that was until the day in which suddenly the EFF started to, with the day of the votes, when the mayors were being elected, just after that election, the first council sittings, as much to the DA's shock as to probably everyone else, including Action SA, the Freedom Front, ACDP, and the ANC, the EFF decided to back DA mayors all over the place. And Ekurhuleni was one of those places where they unexpectedly won the mayoral vote, and which is why their first choice for mayor was not elected there, instead had Tony Campbell. So I don't know that much about how services have been going in Ekurhuleni. I haven't heard much to suggest that there's been a huge amount of change, but then again, I don't really know too well. But I don't know, Terence, what do you make of this? It seems that, DA wins on one side and is about to lose on another side. Do you think that they are going to be able to claw back power in Ekurhuleni anytime soon? What do you make of all this mess?
Look, I think that the big complication there is that the EFF strategy seems to be as much chaos as they can cause. To what end? I don't know. Simply to have themselves entrenched with power. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I think they're fundamentally mercenary. Until they can sort of make a big kind of decapitation grab. So, but they're not going to be mayors, or I doubt it at any rate. But they can ring a concession here and a concession there, and I imagine
I think in where's that place just south of Gauteng, Paarl, I think it is. The EFF did actually get a mayor elected, and then immediately ordered her to resign.
Yeah. No, look, I suspect that they'll take whatever they can get, and then it becomes purely a political game again, and wouldn't be surprised if they hobble the ANC. Although there is an interesting dynamic in that part of the world in which they and the local ANC do seem to get on quite well. So I don't know. This could perhaps be some sort of play to perhaps enhance the status of their allies within the local ANC. But yeah, look, I think that the prospects for the DA there, or their administration, is not great. Not great.
Indeed, it's. I think it was probably even a mistake when they realized they were going to win to put up a candidate there, because they've had, from the sounds of what I've heard, they've had a really difficult time in Ekurhuleni. I don't think they even managed to win all of the chairperson of committee seats in Ekurhuleni, which were taken by EFF ANC majority. As you say, because in that part of the world, the EFF and ANC get along much better, and so are more willing to work together. Mlondi, what's your take on this whole mess?
Yes, Nick. I just want to add that, with all of this confusion, it's the residents, that suffer, at the end of the day, because this changed, it doesn't help them anywhere. So they definitely are going to suffer in terms of service, delivery and stuff like that. So it's them they're going to feel the pain.
Yeah, I think we've really seen that in Joburg, right? Where just as a water crisis is hitting the city, it's not clear whether there's a mayor at the helm to be able to respond to it at all. So regardless of whether you have the best mayors in the world vying for the position, if no one's actually in the chair for more than 5 minutes, you're not really going to see a lot of reforms and changes happening in the city. and that goes for Ekerley, I'm sure, just as much as Joburg.
Mm-hmm.
Terence, any final thoughts?
No, I wish them God's fondest wisdom, because they're going to need it.
No, very much so. Okay, so this is a topic that's a bit out of left field, but actually it's a strangely appropriate phrase for this topic, and that is the Qatar 2022 FIFA World Cup. And I think there's some interesting things to unpack in this issue. So, as anyone who's a soccer fan knows, this year we're going to be having a World Cup, and the Soccer World Cup is, of course, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, sporting events in the entire sporting calendar of the world. You get buy-in and people watching it from all over the place, and even people who aren't normally soccer fans jump with glee and suddenly start talking about the teams as though they know what they're talking about. So it's good fun time every year, and of course it's really big money, big business. People pay a lot to get their adverts up during the World Cup. So we've had a mixed bag of successes and not as great, and some not as great World Cups over the past couple of years. Of course, South Africa, I think, hosted quite a successful one in 2010. And in many ways, that was the high point of South Africa post '94. But the most recent World Cup has been given very controversially to Qatar, a small oil-rich state on the coast of Arabia. And there are many reasons to think that Qatar was perhaps not the greatest choice to host the World Cup. So as anyone who doesn't follow the World Cup that closely, you'll kind of be thinking to yourself, oh, is there one this year? Don't they all normally have that in like June? That's when South Africa had it. Well, in Qatar, the weather is so uncomfortably, unbearably hot in the middle of summer. They had to move the World Cup to late November, early December, basically the middle of Qatar's winter, in order to make it slightly more tolerable for all of the guests that are going to be coming. There are other problems too, which have been raised about Qatar, namely that it's an extremely strict Islamic state, which enforces quite a lot of aspects of Sharia law in its everyday goings about, like how you are allowed to live your life. And it seems that a lot of this is going to extend to people who are there for the World Cup. So, for example, you're supposed to not use any profanity in public. You have to dress modestly, according to the official instructions given by the Qatari government. You must be extra respectful to places of worship. Now, that kind of goes without saying, but soccer fans are not exactly known for their I don't know, level-headedness, especially when celebrating or commiserating a sporting victory. And also, of course, while Qatar has made a few concessions on the issue of alcohol, it's still extremely restricted. So normally alcohol is banned in Qatar, but within licensed bars, you are going to be able to consume a certain amount of alcohol. But in a lot of ways, it kind of seems, and on top of that, no homosexuality and no dating is allowed at the Qatari World Cup. So on top of the normal problems with, there's this weather problems, and then there's the sort of, I guess you could call them no fun allowed rules, which really don't make it seem like Qatar was the ideal choice to select for a World Cup. But Mlondi, you were kind of pointing out to me that there is also a bit of a darker side as to why Qatar is not a great choice for a World Cup.
Yes, Nick. Well, I guess you just touched a bit on it as you were talking, about the, about the social rules that they have there. So, like, the rules on alcohol, and also saw, an article that I read just a few minutes ago. Just before the show, that that you aren't allowed to shake a woman's hand. So all those rules that just don't make sense. You just think to yourself, then what's the point of even going to Qatar to go watch the World Cup? Just stay at home and watch it. So it's those rules that just make one think, no, man, this is wrong. It's not right.
And then, for fascinating reading, just go and have a look at the Wikipedia page of the Qatari 2022 World Cup, and you will see the list of controversies, which includes the use of slave labor, which is alleged in the construction of some of the incredible stadiums that Qatar is going to have to build for the World Cup, which require things like massive air conditioning systems, as well as the fact that the country is extremely discriminatory against LGBT people, right? So, of course, they have made it explicit in the rules that homosexuality is not permitted in Qatar. I even think homosexuality carries the death sentence in Qatar. So I guess gay soccer fans don't go to the World Cup. Terence, my take on the international reaction is that no one is particularly happy about Qatar having the World Cup, but there's sort of been almost a compromise where everyone is just willing to take the oil money and keep quiet about it, because of course Qatar has an enormous amount of oil funding. What do you make of them getting to host the World Cup and the relative lack of outrage, I think, from serious players about it?
Yeah, I think that this for me highlights one of the how can I put this? One of the issues with any kind of multinational activity or institution that's meant to bring us all together. It's something we all, we can all love as human beings. There are cultural mores, norms, national politics that are going to intrude in that. I spent a couple of years of my life in Taiwan, and it took me 24 hours to spam bots have been going for us. I saw that. That was wild. It took me sort of 24 hours to realize something. If you had said to me as a young man who had grown up in apartheid that culture was important or whatever, my inclination may have been to say, well, it's a cover for racism or whatever. Having gone to a society that was very culturally different, it took me 24 hours to realize people can think very differently. We live in a globalized world, and we've got to learn to. I don't think it's optional that we have to learn to sort of rub along and mediate those differences. But yeah, what Qatar is doing here, and I'm not endorsing it. I would not like to live in Qatar. Top tip: don't execute people for being gay. Just so we know, public service announcement.
I have been to Qatar, and I can say that it has some of the most unpleasant weather I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Yeah, look, imagine it's also like hot and whatever. But if you are part of this global sporting community, you're going to find takes all sorts to make the world. In the 1960s, Brazil, which was soccer mad, was under a military dictatorship, and Germany was disgustingly pacifist. Interesting thing, back in 2006 when it was held in Germany, there was a story. Apparently, the biggest house of ill repute in Germany is in Cologne. It's like 12 stories, like an apartment block, and they draped this massive banner showing this like scantily clad lass, and the flags of every participating country. Anyway, apparently Saudi Arabian and Iranian fans were very, very offended by this. And at that time, actually, there was a movement in Sweden not to boycott the games because they were concerned about human trafficking, prostitution, and the U.S. State Department had a statement of concern. You're going to find this. You're going to find something everywhere. Although I do think that there is a difference between saying, well, there's a particular problem in a particular society. I mean, South Africa has its corruption and shenanigans and crime or whatever. Qatar, by contrast, I just don't know if a society that is that restrictive is necessarily the best forum to host the wonderful multicultural diversity of our globalized world. Soccer fans are known for their fondness for beverages.
Exactly.
But look, one final comment is that a Nordic website, I think, actually did a survey of some of the big hotels in Qatar and asked them, okay, will they admit gay couples? And I think 3 said no, absolutely not. About half of them said yeah, no, they're okay with it, and the rest said yeah, they'll do it, but just please don't show anyone you're gay. Like what don't ask, don't tell sort of policy. But I
I've
can
heard
almost guarantee. Yeah,
that the UAE, Dubai, just across the sea from Qatar, has a surprisingly vibrant underground gay scene. But even though it's got the same sort of death penalty and things there, but I guess some people like the thrill of danger or something, because if I was gay, I would not go to either of those countries. But yeah, look, I think the bottom line here is, as someone in the comments said, money talks. If North Korea made a bid for the World Cup and tried to host it, I think a lot of countries would put their foot down. But when Qatar does it, yeah, sure, they're not quite as bad as North Korea, but I think all that sweet oil money probably helps to soothe the wounds slightly.
Think about the global brand, Qatar Airways.
Yeah, right. One of the cheapest airlines to fly on.
Yeah, and I imagine you can get a DOP on Qatar. I'm not sure. I've never flown it, but
I've been on it a few times. I can't actually remember. I think you can. So yeah, they're willing to bend the rules sometimes.
I also noticed that Richard Bausch is calling me a clown. Well, I've been called it. Shout out to you.
All right. Last topic for today. Zweli Mkhize.
I know you would talk clowns.
Yes, there we go. Going to have to talk about Zweli Mkhize going to be running against Cyril Ramaphosa for president of the ANC. And he was doing an interview on Newsroom Africa where he was being asked about the digital vibe scandal, which is the reason he resigned as health minister. He once again said that he and his family did not benefit. He did not personally benefit from the proceeds of the tender and could not be held responsible for any of the benefits in that the digital vibe scandal tender that was extended to his family members by the individuals controlling the company. He went on to say, look, I've learned lessons out of this and think we need to be more vigilant as we go into the future. In this case, even though I say I had no personal benefit and was not directly involved in the procurement process, I have issued an apology to say that it was happening in my department. I didn't like it, and I apologize for that. He then went on to say that despite this, he is very much ready to be the ANC's leader, and if elected, he would address the problems afflicting the party, saying, quote, I believe I've got something to add. I believe my main focus as leader of the ANC is to bring about unity in a strong, coherent party capable of fulfilling its mission, and that is to improve the lives of the people of South Africa. I believe I have experience that will assist in ensuring the good policies of the party are implemented. And Mlondi, very briefly, is shame an emotion which Zweli Mkhize possesses?
Definitely no, Nick. These guys in the ANC, they all have no shame, including Zweli. So definitely he doesn't have any shame. Shame long left that party and it's long gone. they don't have any shame.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with it. It's just madness that you could just walk away from such an obvious corruption scandal, say, oh, I resign, which is good. That's what he should have done. But then you kind of go, oh, well, I guess, I'm ready to be in charge of the country now. Terence, what do you make of this?
Two things. Richard Callan said something about a decade back about how the ANC was a forgiving organization, and I think that's about right. Let me tell you guys,
putting it quite softly.
Let me tell you guys a quick joke. Given that apparently I've been identified as a clown. Okay. Rishi Sunak, Joe Biden, and Zweli Mkhize go to meet God. And Sunak says, listen, the Conservative Party is in big trouble and we're falling apart and whatever. How long until we can sort this out? And God says, probably about 10 years. And he said, but I'll be out of office by then and everyone's just going to think I'm a clown. And God shrugs. So, well, that's it. Joe Biden says, yeah, we've got problems in the Democratic Party. We got these woke Easters and lots of people angry with us. How long until these issues are sorted out? And God says, 20 years. And Biden just bursts into tears. He says, "Yeah, but I'm an old man. I'll be dead by then, and people will just start to remember all the bad things." And Zweli Mkhize puts up his hand, and God just starts to cry.
What more can we say? All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for listening.
Oh, and we just lost power.
Yes, no, I've lost power too. Okay, and on that final note, good luck to Ira Godongwana with the midterm budget policy speech, and we will be back tomorrow on the Daily Friend Show. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.